Chapter 6. I sneaked around the side of the house and crawled into a thicket of bushes growing wild by the wall. There, unknown to any of the caretakers, was a small broken window. Back in the days when Miss Lillian and her cats inhabited the floor above, Georgie and I used it to sneak inside. Cautiously, I wiggled through and dropped into the cellar. A breath of cold, dank air met me. The smell of an old and musty cellar shut away from the sunlight. I shivered and shined the flashlight into the darkness. The basement was full of snakes, but that didn't worry me. Neither did the rustle of mice in the corners. I feared vague sounds, faint footsteps, mournful sighs, low whispers. Hoping I was truly alone, I made my way around boxes, barrels, piles of newspaper, and broken furniture. I took care to avoid the dark recesses of the cellar and the door to the storeroom still locked, its key long gone. I never been in the house without Georgie. By the time I reached the rickety stairs leading to the first floor, my skin was clammy and my legs were shaky. Taking a deep breath, I put my foot on the first step, then the second. Slowly, I climbed the stairs, stopping every time one creaked. At the top, I eased the door open and stood on the threshold, peering down the dark hall, first toward the kitchen and then toward the front of the house. No sound, no movement. On tiptoe, I edged along the wall, heading for the main staircase. The air stank of cat pee and mildew. The floors and walls murmured to each other in creaks and groans. Wallpaper hung from the plaster in long, loose strips. Every now and then a curtain of air lifted them, and their dry whispers joined the other sounds. At last I stood at the bottom of the once grand flight of stairs that led to the upper floors. I remembered Miss Lillian descending the very same stairs, dressed in gray, one thin hand grasping the rail, her head high, her eyes scornful. Behind her, my mother knelt and swept the carpet steps with a whisk broom, collecting the dirt in a dustpan and watching me anxiously. "You, girl, don't play here," Miss Lillian said. "Your mother's working. She can't be bothered with you now." The vision was so real I almost ran outside, the way I used the way I used to. But tonight the staircase was empty. No one was there. Not Miss Lillian, not Mother. As fearful as if the old woman still barred my way, I ran up the steps. Staying so close to the wall, I brushed against the family picture hanging there. Dusty, fly-specked, faded to pale shades of brown. Miss Lillian's bedroom was at the end of the hall, the biggest and brightest, with a view of fields and woods and the road beyond. I walked toward the closed door, wincing every time a board creaked under my feet. She wasn't in her room, I told myself. She died downstairs with her cats as witnesses. If she lingered, and I was sure she had, she'd be in the front parlor, behind its closed door. I knew the rules, but I also knew the exceptions. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob slowly and pushed the bedroom door open. Again, I saw Miss Lillian as I remembered her, sitting in her big bed, watching my mother set down the breakfast tray, waiting while she poured the tea, finally spying me in the doorway. "Get away, thief! You're after my jewelry, but you won't get it. Not while there's breath in my body." The bed was as empty as the stairs, its sheets frayed by mice. The jewelry had disappeared years ago, but the closet still held Miss Lillian's clothing. Skirts, blouses, and dresses, long out of style, but of fine quality, except for the moth holes. I grabbed some clothes and stuffed them into a pillowcase, too scared to think about what would look best. No time to be choosy. Anything was better than the filthy rags I was wearing. Half expecting Miss Lillian to stop me, I ran to the bathroom. Although the water had been turned off, Miss Lillian's soaps and shampoos, her combs and brushes and towels, lay where she'd left them, dusty and cobwebbed, but still usable. As I dumped toiletries into the pillowcase, a movement caught my eye. Miss Lillian stood a few inches away, watching me. She was wilder and stranger than ever, her hair long and tangled, her clothes in rags. I gasped and stepped backward, and so did she, her face twisted in fear. I thrust out my hands to keep her away, and she did the same. Close to fainting, I leaned against the wall and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. It wasn't Miss Lillian after all. It was my reflection. No wonder Lisa had been scared when I stepped out of the woods. Lugging the bulging pillowcase, I hurried to the steps. It didn't matter how much noise I made now. I had to get out. The next time, it might really be Miss Lillian I saw. At the bottom of the stairs, I stole a quick look at the parlor's closed door. Behind it, I heard barely audible movements and a low sigh. Clutching my bundle, I fled down the hall to the cellar, tripping over newspapers and boxes in my haste. At any moment, I expected Miss Lillian to scream, "Stop, thief! Do you hear me? Stop!" I shoved the pillowcase through the cellar window and scrambled out after it, dropping small things as I ran. I fled into the woods. It was almost dawn. The trees were swathed in the morning mist, and the fallen leaves were damp and slippery underfoot. A rabbit leapt across my path, and I caught a glimpse of the albino deer in the field. His antlers head turned in my direction. Before I reached the shed, Georgie came rushing to meet me. "Where have you been, Diana? I had a bad dream, and you weren't here." I hid Miss Lillian's belongings behind my back and tried to edge past him. "I couldn't sleep," I said, so I went for a walk. "What's that?" Georgie grabbed at the bundle. I thrusted him away. "Nothing," I lied. Just some stuff from the trailer." "I thought you were never going there again." "Just this one last time." "But what is it?" Georgie lunged at me again. "I want to see it." This time he caught hold of the bundle and yanked hard. Out fell the brush, the comb, the soap, the shampoo, all rolling away in different directions. I scurried around, picking everything up. "I can't stand being dirty anymore, that's all." Georgie backed away from the soap as if it were poison. "I hope you don't expect me to use that junk." "It wouldn't hurt you to take a bath." "Are you joking? I haven't taken a bath for ages, and neither have you. Don't you remember how nice, clean clothes feel? I like my clothes the way they are." He sniffed his shirt. "They smell like me." "Maybe you smell bad," I suggested. "So, what if I do?" "Look at Nero." I pointed to the cat sitting in a patch of sunlight, carefully licking his paws and rubbing his face. "He washes." Giving me a sly grin, Georgie licked the back of his hand and rubbed his face with it. "There, that's my bath." "I'm ashamed of you," I said. "You're absolutely filthy, and you don't even care. What would Mother think?" Georgie's smile vanished. "Don't say that. Don't. Mother's gone, Diana. She doesn't care what happens to us anymore." I glared at him, unable to think about what he'd just said. "Stay dirty. See if I care." Leaving Georgie to sulk, I ran across the field to the pond. Stripping off my clothes, I let them fall to the ground in a filthy heap. If I washed them, they'd fall to pieces. I waded into the pond, shivering as the cool water rose higher on my legs. By the time I was belly deep, my skin was a mass of goosebumps, but it didn't bother me the way it once would. Georgie and I had gotten very tough in the years we'd lived on our own. In fact, nothing ever really hurt us, at least not for long. Taking a deep breath, I sank under the surface and then stood up, wet all over. I began to scrub, and scrub, and scrub. When my skin glowed pink and clean, I began working on my hair. At first, I made no headway against its obstinate mats and tangles. I shampooed and brushed, shampooed and combed until my scalp throbbed. If I had a pair of scissors, I'd have cut it all off. At last, I managed to pull the comb through my hair from roots to ends. Satisfied I'd done all I could, I waded out of the pond and sat in the sun. As soon as my skin was dry, I pulled on a flowered skirt. It settled on my hips and trailed in the grass. Like the skirt, the blouse I'd taken was several sizes too big, but at least both things were clean and neither were torn or stained. Surely Lisa wouldn't be afraid of me now. Why, even without shoes, I felt almost civilized. My hair was still wet, so I sat and combed it, tugging at the last of the tangles till I was sure no sticks or leaves clung to it. Suddenly, Georgie stepped out of the woods and stopped, clearly astonished at the sight of me. "Diana," he whispered, "is that you?" "Of course it's me, silly." I laughed and tossed my hair. With no tangles to weigh it down, it flew free across my face, as clean and sweet with shampoo as Lisa's. Georgie came closer and touched my hair. "I forgot it was so light." "Yours would be the same color, too, if you'd let me wash it." Georgie backed away fast. "You're not touching me." I spread my hands. Okay, but if you change your mind..." "No chance of that." Georgie scrutinized me from a safe distance. "Where did you get those clothes?" I stood up and twirled so the long flowered skirt floated around me. "Isn't it pretty?" Georgie stared at me, his eyes fearful. "You didn't get that stuff from the trailer," he whispered. "Those are her things, her clothes, her soap, her comb, her brush. You went in her house, didn't you?" I shrugged. "We've gone in there before." "Not since she died," Georgie whispered. "What if you disturbed her?" Under the grime, his face looked pale. "Did you see her?" he persisted. "Or hear her?" "No." I fidgeted with my hair, unable to meet his eyes. Uneasily, I remembered the faint sounds behind the parlor's closed door and the terror I'd felt as I ran through the dark cellar. Forgetting his fear of a bath, Georgie came closer. "Something scared you, I can tell." I shook my head. "Mice," I said. "There was nothing there but mice." Near my foot, a grasshopper clung to a tall weed. His antenna turned toward me. I nudged the weed and watched him jump away. "What made you go inside?" Georgie's voice rose. "You never cared about being dirty before." I looked at him and wrinkled my nose, deliberately insulting him. "You smell bad. You know that? You stink." Georgie drew in his breath sharply. "It's because of Lisa. You still want to be her friend, don't you?" "No," I lied. "I just don't want to be dirty like you." "I hate Lisa." Georgie's eyes filled with tears, streaking his cheeks as they ran down his face. "Nothing's been the same since she came. We never used to fight. I hate her. I hate her." Instantly sorry, I reached out for him, but he was already running toward the woods. In a moment he'd vanished, and I was alone in the sunny field. Maybe I should have run after him and apologized, but he'd made me angry talking like that. I'd gone into the house and taken only what I needed. Just a few little things. No one had stopped me. Nothing had happened. At least, not yet. So, instead of following Georgie, I sat in the sunshine and braided my hair into a long single plait, as thick and heavy as rope, and tied it with string. When I was done, I felt calmer. Georgie would get over his anger. He'd see I hadn't done anything so terrible. Nero sat nearby watching me, his tail flicking. I picked him up and burrowed my face in his soft black fur. "Now I'm as clean as you, and smell good, too." The cat twisted out of my arms. In a flash, he was gone, bounding through the weeds in pursuit of whatever small animal might cross his path. Maybe he preferred my old familiar smell. Well, let him play with Georgie then. Persnickety old thing, why did I care? Soon I'd have a new friend, a real friend, a girl to talk to and laugh with. I squinted at the sun. It was past noon. Had Lisa found her diary? Read what I'd written? Did she plan to meet me at the terrace? Would she really and truly be my friend? I ran across the field and into the woods, eager to see what she was doing. Near the trailer, I heard Mr. Morrison's voice. I dropped to my knees and crawled noiselessly through the underbrush until I was close enough to see and hear. Lisa sat at the picnic table, surrounded by books, her diary among them. Her father sat across from her, drilling her with math problems. Macduff lay at his feet, dozing peacefully in the sunlight. Come on, Lisa, Mr. Morrison said patiently. You're not concentrating. Lisa frowned at the page in front of her. I don't care whether car A or car B gets to Chicago first. It's a boring problem. Mr. Morrison sighed and pulled a pipe out of his shirt pocket. I watched him light it. The scent of tobacco drifted across the grass, and I breathed it in. Reminded of my father. He'd often smelled of the same sort of tobacco, aromatic, a little strong, but unlike cigarette smoke, pleasant. I wished I could get closer, join Lisa and her father at the picnic table, sit between them as if I were a part of a family. As if I were a part of a family again. Filled with longing, I wiped tears from my eyes with the back of my hand. Wish all you want, I told myself. It won't happen. You'll never finish the problem at this rate, Mr. Morrison said. And you've still got science, history, and French to go. Lisa grimaced and bent her head over the paper. Mr. Morrison leaned on his elbows and smoked, gazing at the fields and woods as if they were his own personal estate. For a moment he looked right at me. I ducked lower, ready to run, but apparently he was too absorbed in his own thoughts to realize I was just a few feet away. After a while, Mr. Morrison stretched his long, skinny arms and stood up. Can I trust you to sit here and work on those problems while I go inside and write? Sure. Lisa watched him return to the trailer. The moment the door banged shut behind him, she opened her diary. She read what I'd written. I was certain of it. And then looked right at my hiding place. You're there, aren't you? She said. Diana, that's your name. And you want to be my friend. I didn't answer. We were too close to the trailer. Her father might step outside for some reason and hear me. I must be crazy, but I'll meet you on the terrace, she said. I'll have Macduff with me for protection. You better be telling the truth, and you better be alone. Don't try anything funny, either. At the sound of his name, Macduff raised his head, hopefully, and watched Lisa run inside. In a few seconds, she was back with his leash. While she fastened it to his collar, I took off through the woods, planning to get to the terrace before she did. I made a wide circle around the house, afraid now of the front windows. The plywood covering them was cracked. Perhaps Miss Lillian was peering out from the dark, watching me go by dressed in her clothes, loathing me even more than before. Cautiously, I approached the terrace and climbed its broad steps. No sign of the old woman, no sound. Hoping she didn't know I was near, I perched on the edge of the lion bench. Instantly aware of the silent house behind me, I waited for Lisa. A breeze ruffled the weeds, glowing tall on the lawn. Turning brown now, their seed pods emptying into the air. Above, the sky burned deep, pure October blue. The trees had turned red, gold, brown. Their leaves littered the terrace, blown into piles in the corners. Despite the sun's warmth, I shivered in the house's gloomy shadow. I pictured Miss Lillian creeping about in the dark room the way she used to, her mind racing with crazy thoughts, her heart full of hatred for Georgie and me. A trickle of sweat ran down my spine. Please come soon, Lisa, I whispered. Please like me, and please be my friend. End of chapter 6.